Yeah. Gotta go for the goal, yeah, we gotta win. Our heart and the soul, yeah, we putting in the trenches with the bros, gotta play to win. One more play, then we in the ship. One more game, we gon' get a win. Fight through pain, I can never quit. One more play, then we in the ship. One more play, then we in the ship. Gotta go for the goal, yeah, we gotta win. Our heart and the soul, yeah, we putting in the trenches with the bros, gotta play to win. One more play, then we in the ship. One more game, we gon' get a win. Fight through pain, I can never quit. One more play, then we in the shit. One more play, then we in the shit. From the goal line.
Status Podcast.
But just wanted to get this thing started, man.
Yes, sir.
Appreciate you for joining us,
Taking
man.
the time out.
We got another Gator, McKeesboro. We apologize. We keep getting Gators on here, but we got another Gateway Gator.
Yeah. I gotta apologize to my Kent State fan. We got a Red Hawk.
We breaking all the rules.
Breaking all the rules.
It's all love. It's all with you. It's all Mac. We still group together. We still bonded.
The thing is, like, at Gateway, you had Brian Williams that was doing his thing.
Yep.
And then after that, you got Dorian Bell and Brian
They were
was
all
kind of
the same year.
doing their thing.
They were a year ahead of me.
And then Cam Sadler,
They were
Shane
2 years,
Hill, and that before that, and then like we know those dudes, and out of nowhere, you're gone. Gateway come to the port. Number 4 take the rock, go up the sideline. I'm like, man, who the heck? Who the heck?
Everybody was going.
Everybody was going.
Yeah.
How was it being at Gateway behind all of those dudes and seeing what they was able to accomplish and then getting your turn?
So the best way I sum it up is like it was a blessing and a curse at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
So my freshman year was that 06 season. I think at the time the only guy who was like that guy that senior class was John Ditto.
Okay, yeah.
And all the rest of the guys were like, it was the juniors and the sophomores was playing because there really wasn't no crazy talent that senior year. But I got to see all those guys at their younger ages competing. Like they're playing as sophomore, playing as juniors because that was the bulk of the talent. So coming as a freshman, it was just like, it's an eye opener because you see all these dudes even like 5th and 6th grade. When I was in 5th and 6th grade, I'll take it even farther back. That's when Morty was playing up there at the school, and Aaron Smith was playing up at the school, and I think they had a great season to the point where they did a pep rally at the 5th and 6th grade building. So they came and did a parade through the halls, and I'm like 5th and 6th grade. I'm looking at these guys as superheroes. And a shout out to them, shout out to Morty, shout out to Aaron, because like you really never know who you touch.
Right.
That's when I decided, like whenever it went through my head, like when I get to that level, like I'm coming up, it was like it's go time. Like whenever I get up there, like it's pretty much setting the standard. So the standard was set for me so early because you look at those guys who were playing ahead of you, they look larger than life type of characters. And they were in that same Gateway jersey that you're wearing in the Little League, so you think you're connected still and you know your time is coming. So from there, I just knew like, okay, my freshman year going in, these guys who came down for the prep rally, these larger than life guys I'm playing with, and you kind of just watch. You know, you scope out the scene, you see what's going on, you seeing how the head coach works, how the offensive, defensive coordinators works, and it's kind of like a system. Like it's pretty much what I'm explaining is like the whole system, the whole powerhouse. It was almost like a factory. Like you come in, see how the guys work, and they set that standard. Yeah. So to me, it was like, you know, I'm just going to practice. I'm, you know, following the program, but these guys are doing it at such a high level to where you either got to meet it or you ain't. You know what I mean? You out there. You're either gonna sink or float. So it was kind of just like, you know what I mean? You know, I'm just behind. I'm playing my game. Like anywhere else, I probably would have been a starter as a sophomore or junior starting. But you got these elite guys who are ahead of you. It's just like, you know what I mean? I had no problem, you know, with waiting my turn. I had no problem because these guys were those dudes. So it's like, you know what I mean? It wasn't a big deal to me. So by the time I got to where it's like, all right, it's my time to play, it was like I had so many guys ahead of me who laid out that blueprint. It was almost just like, I mean, I'm rolling right now. I just know it's my turn. You know what I mean?
Did that affect you mentally as far as like, you know, the recruit process come? Because, you know, it's like, all right, my senior year's here. I ain't really been playing. what does that mean for me as far as getting recruited?
Right, I was what you would call one of the late bloomer athletes, and then shout out to Dave Williams. I gotta give Dave Williams his flower because he was one of those guys who I looked up to and was like, I saw him do it, so I could do it. So I don't know if y'all know Dave's story,
He went
but
to Michigan State.
Yep, but he picked that up towards his senior year.
Okay.
Yeah, like he was one of those guys who was on the bubble. I think he had a lot of other schools, but that big D1 didn't hit for him until it was like later in his high school career. And I always had that in my head, like I watched Dave do it, so I knew I could do it.
Yeah.
Things like that. So it has a lot. Like when it comes to us, it's like we got to see that somebody do it,
No doubt.
to actually believe you can actually do it. So it was kind of like, I did my little, you got to go on your tours, hit up all the schools. You go to the went to the Rivals, went to the Scout.com camps, hit all the different school camps, and you just got to show out. So it was mainly my sophomore years when I got to taste, the different combines. We did the National Underclassmen Combine as a sophomore. I got a plaque for that. And then we did the Nike Spark. That's when Nike Spark was big. We did the Nike Spark. It was like big on your Spark rating. So I would practice all the different things they tested for. Make sure I show out for that. And then they had a pit combine. So that was like sophomore, junior, kind of just doing the local stuff. And then once I became a junior, my junior year going into my senior year, that's when they would put me on the map as far as recruiting goes. They did it was a national underclassmen. It was the Army All-American Combine. Mm-hmm. So I think was it Dorian, Corey, and I think it was just Dorian, Corey got invited to the game, but that weekend leading up to it, they have the underclassmen come and do a combine.
Okay.
So I was able to get invited to that.
How did you get invited to that?
It's all like name and, you kind of, since Dorian and Corey was in there, your coaching staff, you get pulled to kind of get you in different coaching staffs, different upcoming guys. I think it was only almost like 150, almost 200 guys, invite only. It was a way that I don't think I was originally a part of it. It was like, one of the coaches looked out, threw me in there just to give me an opportunity. That's another thing. When you get that opportunity, you got to take advantage. So I got down there almost like, out of 200 guys, I was guy 199. You know what I mean? To get invited to the camp. And when you get down there, they do 40 vert, and then they do the one-on-ones, and then they do write-ups, like of the standout guys. And I was one of the standout guys. I got 2 picks, so I'm doing one-on-ones. My 40 was on point. My vert was on point. They did like a medicine ball throw or bench. It wasn't. I think they did bench press. They did like medicine ball throw to substitute the bench press, and everything was on point enough to where they did a write-up on me as one of the top DBs in the camp, and that's what took my notoriety up another level, put me on the radar with other schools.
This sounds like a Alabama type culture that you guys had at Gateway. Because what you're explaining, like with Shane and then Cam and then
Starting
Dorian and Morty, like all of those guys, not only what they did on the football field, but what they did in terms of the camp circuit and being recruited. It's just something that whenever you go to Gateway, this is what you do.
Right. So I was just blessed to be in the system. The system, by the time I got there, 06, the system was already kind of a well-oiled machine.
Right.
So they kind of ironed out, the bumps and bruises. So by the time I was up there, it was like, all right, this is the system. You got to raise your, you got to put it on yourself to raise your level of work ethic and talent. But if you can match the system to your efforts, it's kind of just like you writing your own ticket. So I just always got to give the flowers to the guys that came before us because they kept that machine going and allowed me to kind of get in there and see these guys moving and doing how they move and kind of just rise into that occasion.
Yeah.
So it's always it's kind of a cultural thing. If you keep that culture going, even today, even though that the staff isn't there anymore, that culture is still there to where guys are still playing at a high level. There's guys still going big and still doing their thing from that original era. So
I think that from that era back then, like to this day, it's the reason why Gateway is still like a powerhouse name because of those years.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right. It took them grind years to kind of really get it there.
Because now when you mention Gateway, like, okay, Gateway.
Yeah.
Right,
You know what I
right.
mean?
It's a name. It's definitely a name around Pittsburgh. Like any recruiter in the nation, when it comes to Pennsylvania, Western Pennsylvania specifically, all right, what schools I'm gonna go check out? Gateway's on that list,
Yeah.
100%.
I know when I was coaching at Boston College as a graduate assistant, whenever we would get into recruiting meetings and we would say, hey, Dana, you are recruiting Western PA. You're going to Gateway, you're going to McKeesport, you're going to Central, you're going to NA, you're going to these 5 schools.
Right.
And from there, then you figure out who else is
Right,
in town.
right.
But those are the schools that you're hitting regardless.
Right. And a lot of that has to do with, the system, the culture that was created, the circus. It's all about getting notoriety too. Like we had it to the point where we was ranked nationally. My class specifically, our record is something crazy. You have the stats as far as like our high school winning record.
34.
I think we only lost 4 games since my freshman year through senior year. I think we only lost 4 games, period.
Yeah.
But it's just creating that atmosphere to where we used to go to Ohio and play games, our season opener. We used to go when we did 7-7 circuits. We went up to Oregon. And it's all about creating those relationships.
That's crazy.
Yeah, we went to Oregon, went on the campus. We played against Eisenhower down in Texas. We played against Long Beach Poly.
Oh wow.
And this is over the summer leading up to our season. So we're getting all this exposure. You know what I mean? You make a play here, you make a pick on a guy that's getting ready to go, like somebody who's committed. Yeah, somebody's committed to USC. Barkley. We played against Matt Barkley.
Oh wow.
Down in Oregon.
Yeah.
So you get a pick on Matt Barkley. That man's going to USC. It's like, okay, who's this guy who got that pick?
Yeah, exactly.
So it's like, and let me follow him when the season started.
Yeah.
So things like that, just to get your team exposure. We had the blessing to have that coach that wanted to push it to where he wants his guys to succeed. So shout out to Coach Terry, man.
Yeah.
Shout out to him and his whole staff and the guys that helped him kind of get us that exposure. Because that's really what it is. Like our work ethic. If you wanted to work, you can control that. You can control your work ethic. You can control how hard you work and put in the skill set, but you can't really control how much exposure you get, especially as a kid, especially then. Now, you got more control over that.
Especially with social media.
Right. But back then, you really didn't get that much exposure. So he made it a big deal to kind of get us exposed, get some eyes on us. If you got eyes on you, then that's all you need to create an opportunity.
That's dope. So, being at Gateway, I gotta ask, because whenever we were playing, the conference wasn't as strong.
Mm-hmm.
So whenever you seen McKeesport on that schedule, what was that week like?
McKeesport was a nice little rivalry, man. I will say that, man. Yeah, y'all had a lot of guys that tapped and chatted, and we knew a lot of the same people. So it was like, you know what I mean? People get each other's phone number leading up to the week, call and talk smack on the phone, things like that. But it was always like we would watch the film, we would point out the guys who were doing their thing, like, okay, we gotta look out for him, We had the scouting reports. But it was always like a hype week. Like we always would get up for McKeesport versus like another team that we would play. Like every time we would play in McKeesport, it was like, all right, this is that week. Like this is actually the week I was been waiting on. Like they always say you never want to look past your current opponent, but we was always looking for that week to play McKeesport. You know what I mean? So it was always a big deal for us. Like we want to make sure we keep that going. I'll never forget the game down in Heinz Field. Yeah, I played. It was our junior year, or my sophomore year, but my junior year. We played McKeesport down.
No,
we supposed to. We folded.
You still.
We played at home. Y'all was up. No. Y'all was up 28. 28-0 at one point. Then came 28-7 going to halftime. We came back. At
Gateway. I know. I remember that game. It was like a big deal. Whatever game it was, it felt like the Whitfield title.
Yeah, it was like they said like 10,000 people there and stuff.
I still remember that game. So it's like, you know what I mean, that stuff, you have that in the background. So it's like you always want to make sure you get up to play McKeesport because the games get wild.
Yeah, that year was insane.
Yeah, that was a crazy game.
Yeah. But,
I remember speaking of like the chumps you played leading up to that game. I forget who. It might have been D Bell. He's just I seen he harping to someone like, "We ain't one of them cupcake teams y'all been playing. Y'all play the same teams."
Right. The chirping.
I love that game.
Yeah.
I ain't shake the hand before the game or nothing.
Yeah.
I was that player.
It reminds me of like the Baltimore Steelers.
That's why I said Michigan, Ohio State.
Right. That's kind of how it is, man. That's how it's always been.
that game was so big that whenever I went to school at UConn, like I would talk to people who were like from area or the eastern part of the state, they watched that game on TV.
Yeah.
Like that game was known statewide.
Yeah. And ever since then, it's been like McKeesport, Gateway, trying to match that level again.
I don't think that it has been matched since that game like that. The magnitude of that game was just wow. Just because you had Division I players here, Division I players here. Mm-hmm. And at the time, because that's the same time we went to play Coleraine in Ohio, and we got ranked after a loss just because they seen it and both teams ranked and stuff. It's like that magnitude was crazy.
Yeah.
So after high school, the recruiting. Tell me what the recruiting process was like.
So going into my senior year, I still didn't really have any like crazy offers or looks. I mean, I had like some D1 AA, D2 guys, couple of schools, like the HBCUs, be hollering at me. Towson hollered at me. Towson was on me heavy. I was actually considered going to Towson before I started getting in.
They had a good program.
Yeah,
too.
You would have been behind Terrence West, running back. We played
We played them too.
He was tough.
Yeah.
Did they?
Yeah.
We smacked them both.
So yeah, but yeah. So I was actually getting heavily recruited by Towson, and that was almost like my deciding school until late into the season, and everything was kind of like building up to because I really didn't have a lot of film. But the good thing about it was the guys ahead of me, they would be blowing teams out so much to where after halftime, we were in. You know what I mean? So I had some running back film, I had some safety and corner film as a little bit as a sophomore, a little bit as a junior, but it wasn't really no like full games highlights.
Right.
It was kind of just I'm getting my feet wet a little bit, but that was another blessing too. It was just like we blowing teams out the water. By the time the second quarter, third, fourth quarter, you got the whole second team, the whole third team in. So we was able to get film that way. But by the time I was my senior, it was kind of like everything was building up. Like this guy got potential, he made his plays. We see him. What is he gonna do his senior year? We're gonna wait and see. So put on a show my first 3 games. Came out killing it. But actually, it was funny because the first game of the season we played Penn Hills. I solidified my starting position as corner, but the running back position was all up in the air. It was like 4 or 5 guys. We didn't know who was going to be that guy. And I was actually like bottom of the depth chart at running back coming out as a senior. So we go to the Penn Hills game. Penn Hills, at the time, they had Aaron Donald. They had Buck. Shout out to Buck Cullen Christian. They had Brandon Eifel. They had Miles Davis. These dudes already got their offers locked in, solidified. At the time, none of us who were seniors had offers going into that year.
Wow.
None of us. Delbert, Dayon, Brendan, none of us. So it was like, the Gateway, all the guys left their junior. All the seniors were those guys. They had offers. We don't know who's on the team. We weren't ranked. We weren't, it wasn't that, national ranking that you see on USA Today. It was like, all right, Gateway, you know what I mean? That they're old, they're washed up now. There's nobody left. So I think Penn Hills was ranked in the state, high in the state. I don't know if they were nationally, but they were one of the top schools in the state at the time because they had so much talent. And it was expected for Penn Hills to kind of just blow us out. So we went through. It was a tough game, but we went through all the running backs. Man, it was like, all those guys came in, and it was kind of just like we got to figure out who's going to be that guy. And I actually didn't get in and get my shot until the second half. And we were like, I think we were either tied or we were maybe down one. I think maybe 7-6. Come out of halftime. My first play of the game, my first running back play of the game, I shot out, had like maybe 70, 80 yards skirt before the track guy caught me. I got caught. It's on my tape too, my highlight tape. But then I wasn't running track. It was kind of like I ran track 7th, 8th grade, but by the time I got, senior, I was done with track.
Yeah.
But I wish I'd have kept up with it because they tracked me down. But it was like coming up off of that, it was like a big weight lifted off my shoulder after that play, because it was kind of like I got up and I had so much energy, because it was kind of like I solidified this spot, and I was just hyped because we had no real like game-changing plays leading up to that game, and we didn't know how the game was going to go. Once they got the rock, I shot out, got up, was so hyped. I looked over to the sideline, shaking my head like, yeah, this is my spot. Yeah. So that was a game-changing moment for me. From there, it was just feed me the rock. We ended up winning two touchdowns. It was like 19-6, 19-7. And I ended up, it was like I think the Air Force, one of those like rivalry things was there. It was like the Air Force rivalry game. It was on TV, and they ended up giving me a plaque like as the MVP of the game. And I started the second half. I think I had like over 200 yards in the second half. So that was a big game for me, and that's whenever people started shaking their head like, okay, all that publicity that he got, all the eyes that were watching were kind of like, okay, he's starting to solidify what's going on. So I came out, that was my first game. We had 2 games after that, and then after the first 3 games, they put up, Coach Terry will put together a tape to put out like, okay, this is your first 3 games highlights. Send them out, and then once the half of the season's gone, they make another tape, put it out, and then by the time we got to actually the week before the McKeesport game, that's whenever I started getting offers towards the end of the season, going to the playoffs. And that's kind of what picked up, like towards the end of the season, right before regular season, going to the playoff, and I started getting looks and getting offers. And I ultimately went with Michael Haywood up at Miami of Ohio, which was a pretty good decision for me. Went up there on a visit, I liked everything I saw. I didn't commit actually on the spot up there. I went back home, thought about it, and right before going into our playoffs, right before we played at Heinz Field, is when I committed. I wanted to get out the way because I wanted to be focused and ready to go. Kind of take a shot at States. But yeah, that was kind of my journey, and I liked a lot of what Coach Haywood had to offer. He reminded me a lot of Coach Terry, and I wanted that same environment.
That's saying a lot.
Yeah, he reminded me a lot of Coach T, and I liked the environment. I liked what they were trying to do. I liked the system they had. And I liked where I was, where his plans were to have me involved on the team. So that's a big deal too for student athletes going on those visits. It's not about like, okay, it is about being a part of the team, but it's like, okay, where do I fit? Where's your vision for me? Where do I fit on this team? Because that might not always be what you want it to be. It might not be, okay, how I envision myself on a team might not line up with how the coach wants you to be on that team. So you got to make sure that aligns ahead of time. So I liked what he was, where he had me fitting on the team. So that's what ultimately made my choice to go to Miami.
That's dope. So what was the transition like from high school to college, both athletically and academically?
So I'll start with athletically. It was trying to shift my focus from it being playing with my boys, my bros I grew up with, and having fun, versus, all right, it's still fun, but it's more of a business than fun now. That was the biggest thing I couldn't wrap my head around, where it was, it's a business.
Right.
It is a business. And everything is going to be surrounded by that entity or that business. Everything we do here is is in the benefit of this business. Sometimes it might not even be in your individual benefit, but we're always going to make sure it's the business or that entity is covered. That's what I couldn't wrap my head around, and that's also like, because it's different than high school, because specifically with Gateway, because coaching staff there, everything was about the players. Yeah. Like, we're going to do everything we can to help you individually out. So that's kind of like my biggest struggle, was like, it's no longer just singly about the players. It's more so about that logo, you know what I mean, than it is the players. But there's different ways. Like that might not necessarily be a bad thing. You just got to understand that and adjust yourself accordingly. And then that aspect, and then also dive into the playbook and learning the actual plays and learning where you fit as a runner. Like for me, it was always corner first, running back second. And actually, when I got there, they actually offered me as an athlete, which was kind of like, I can be put anywhere. But ultimately, once I got up there in the camp, I got into playing running back. And knowing that whole scheme was crazy. Like knowing that whole system as a running back, you have to know pretty much after the quarterback, you got to know the most after the quarterback playing running back, because you got to know the offensive line's responsibilities in the run game and in the pass game where you fit. You got to know the receiver routes that you could be included in a route. You got to know the checks whenever hot routes. You got to know the checks. You got to know all that stuff. So besides like throwing the ball. As a quarterback, as a running back, you have to be just as smart as the quarterback. So the playbook and film is that much more important. So as fast as you can get that stuff going in, the better off you'll be. That was another thing with me, right? Versus in high school, it was kind of like a lot of things you get away with because your talent, your speed can kind of supplement the film.
Sure, right,
so we would watch film. But I would pay attention to the guys who are those dudes on the team.
Yeah.
But I really wouldn't care about like the schemes and like what are they running,
Yeah, exactly.
you know what I mean, and reads. Like I would know my reads as far as like, okay, it's just simple. Like, okay, these two are gonna block up to him. But I never really watched like how the defense responds to these two blocking up to him. You know what I mean? Things like that. So you actually got to take it that far once you get to that level.
Teach yourself that.
Right. You
just had a talk on the way up. I think the experience you get from playing and, I guess the collegiate level breaking down film where you can break down the film way faster than someone who just maybe stopped at high school playing. Like, you know what I mean? So that actually plays a part into
it. So you got to turn that up a notch once you get up there. And that was something I really didn't catch on to as fast either. So it's like everything gets turned up a notch. Like your hustle, the way you study film, and then you got to balance it with school as well.
Yeah.
So for me, academics never really was like a crazy big deal. I always made sure to handle my schoolwork, and I got that from my parents, my dad and my mom. They didn't play when it came to schoolwork in general. So I always knew that's something that has to happen. And another thing too, you learn from the guys ahead of you. There's a lot of guys ahead of me who were that caliber to where they could go D1, they could go anywhere in the country, but couldn't make the grades. It was a minimum grade point average with your SAT score. Clearinghouse, you had to be cleared to play that at that certain level. And you see guys who were there, who got offers, and they couldn't even go to the schools because they couldn't make the grades. So it was always like, all right, I'm not going to be that guy. So let me get my head in these books and make sure I do what I need to do. So I learned that in high school, transitioning into college. It's more so, for me, it was more so managing my time versus like the actual difficulty of the curriculum. It was kind of like, all right, this is what I need to do. It's not hard for me to get it, but how do I set time aside for myself to actually, do what I need to do? And I feel like Miami, that's what I liked about Miami too, is they had a really good program as far as like transitioning you in as a freshman and getting that, balance of time instilling in you early. So we always had a study table. It was a mandatory study table that first semester. It didn't matter what time it was. I think it was like late, like maybe from 9 to 10:30 or 9 to 11. We had to sit there, literally, no phones, no nothing. It was almost like, to me, it always felt like I was in detention.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like you sit there and you gotta open up a book. You know what I mean? So, and a lot of guys would just sit there and just not do nothing.
I was that guy.
For me, I hate like wasting, like I hate idle time.
Right.
So it's like if I'm going to be here, they're going to make me be here.
Utilize it.
Let me utilize it.
Right.
So that was a lot. That helped me out a lot because it made me anything I had to handle. Like I dedicated for that study hall. It was like, all right, I got this to do. I'm not doing that until I get up in that study hall. So I made sure I had that time dedicated. And for the guys, so it was supposed to be that first semester, and if you didn't have a certain GPA going into the second semester, you had to stay there.
Right.
So, and that was another motivation too. Like, I'm trying to get off these study tables. I'll make sure my GPA is right, so I don't have to do this. Because I can, after you get that habit, like I can go do this in my dorm. I don't have to be here to do that. So I made sure I had my grades where I needed to be, and then going into it was funny. So from my senior year, I graduated, I think, with like a 2.8, or in high school I graduated with like a 2.8, 2.9. Coming out of high school, once I got to Miami, my first semester I had a 3.6. That was the best I've ever did ever in school. Right. Just because, I took it serious. It was like I was really trying to get off these study tables, and I took advantage of that time like they dedicated for us. They also set you up with some tutors and coordinators to kind of help you also to develop that time. And I took that stuff serious. It's all about just changing your mindset. Like if they had the resources available, it's if you want to take it serious or not. And I made it a big deal. And it was instilled in me from my parents of like, take your education serious, especially if you get an opportunity to get a free degree. Take it serious, and you kind of gotta be like, if you don't want to take it serious, they'll allow you to not take it serious too, as far as the program goes. So you gotta be your own, almost like you gotta be your own advocate, on and off the field, as far as like, yeah, I'm getting a free degree, but let me maximize this degree. Every degree is not equal. Every degree is not created equal. So like, let me maximize the degree as much as I can.
Now, did you when you came from high school into college, did you declare your major right away? Yes. I knew I wanted to be in, early on, I wanted to be in the sports medicine field. Okay. So I got that from early on. Our head coaches in Little League were chiropractors. Okay. And that's kind of it was like, if you got bumps and bruises, go to coach at his office. Yeah. And that's kind of how I knew about chiropractic. And I always associated it with sports. And I didn't necessarily know at the time I wanted to become a chiropractor, but I knew I wanted to be on the health, sports medicine side of sports. I wanted to be on the sports medicine side of that. So I didn't know at the time. I just know like this is the broad field. So they have a kinesiology and health degree. So I declared that going in, and then you can kind of specialize as needed within that degree. Okay. I just didn't know which way I wanted to go from there. So that's the thing too. Like I recommend kids coming out of high school to kind of get the general field or profession that you want to go into. So you're not wasting time. So try to at least, like, you don't have to know specifically what you want to do, but if you want to be an entrepreneur, go into business. I mean, you just be broad, because your first couple of classes aren't going to be specific anyway, but at least declare that so now you can start to take a few classes to get the idea, and if you want to pivot, you can pivot, but at least declare something, and try to be as general as possible in that field. And then kind of go from there. But if you have no idea, then I wouldn't declare one. Like if you have no clue at all, I would try to get that clue your junior year, senior year, try to hone in on something. But if you still don't know, then it does you more harm than good if you just declare something just to declare something. Right. But yeah, so I knew that coming in. But once I went in there, and that's another thing, the school tries to protect their logo. They want every guy to be eligible to play. So once you go in and say, hey, this is what I want to do, they kind of try to give you the easiest path educationally or academically to do that, which is fine, but that might not be in the person's best benefit long term. Right. Like, yeah, if I want to play, this is probably the way to go, but I found myself sitting with my advisor, I found myself saying no a lot to a lot of things because I had an envision of how I wanted my education to go versus what was easiest for them to keep me eligible. So there was a lot of bumping heads when it came to that. But all it is just being your own advocate. If you kind of go with the flow and say, all right, cool, you'll end up getting a degree, but it might not be as strong or as wholesome as you probably could have been. And challenge always equals growth. I wanted to challenge myself physically and mentally
And that's what they had to offer. I mean, you go to a university, you go to school, you're going to be challenged on the field, but you also want to be challenged in the classroom and take advantage of that, because that's what's going to make you grow as a person. It's going to give you better opportunity. That degree is probably going to give you better opportunity than playing sports. To be honest, back then, now it's kind of matching up to where you can take advantage of your name, image, likeness on the field. But back then it was like all we actually have, what we're going to walk away with is this degree. So how can I maximize this degree? So that's what honed me into like being more, taking a lot of the physics classes where you could take, instead of taking a physics class, you can go take some other throwaway class where the teacher loves the football team and they know they're going to get a good grade. Things like that versus like, all right, I'm going to go take this physics. Let me go get into this chemistry where you can actually, that goes towards your degree, but you don't have to take that. So I kind of wanted to challenge myself, like, let me go get into these classes so I can, gain more knowledge on some, things that's going to last long term. So that was to me, that was important, just as important as playing.
Okay, so, sports medicine, your major, it's a demanding major, I imagine. So give us like an example of your type of day in let's say, in season type of day.
As far as the
from wake up to
What time you get up? What time do you do each aspect of your day?
Playing when I
in season.
So my freshman, it was different. We had a lot of we had a bunch of different coaching staffs. But my freshman year, with the original coach that brought me in, we always were in the morning. So we would have 6 a.m. meetings. So you had to be dressed and ready at 6 a.m.
Now, how far is the facilities from where y'all stayed at, the dorm?
Not far. Some players, you get to choose where you stayed at, but some players would stay at the dorm closest to the stadium, and that was like walking distance.
So like a 5:30
right.
wake up.
So yeah. So if you don't got nothing to do, so before practice you got to do, like if you got injuries or anything you got to deal with, you got to go to the training room. So training room was like 4 a.m. So you know what I mean. So if you had to get into the training room, you had to be waking up. That clock had to ring at 3:30 a.m.
Yeah. So pretty much don't get injured.
Right. and I want to touch on that too, because that like being in the sports medicine field, that's kind of a detriment to the team to put a bad notation on getting treatment. And it was always like, and I was always kind of like, stay out the training room, stay out the training room. You don't want to be that guy in the training room. Looking back on it now, every guy should have been getting up and getting in that training room and getting some type of treatment and maintaining their body. But you grow up, different mentalities, you rub it off, you know what I mean? You don't want to be that guy. But in reality, you want to be able to maintain your body as much as you can, especially with that demand. So I feel like everybody should be going to the training room and getting some type of work done, even if you're feeling okay, just to get that extra time to make sure, more so preventative than anything, to make sure you're keeping yourself going. But yeah, so the clock was moving. The clock was going off 3:30 a.m. If you had to be in the training room. I made sure I wasn't in the training room because I was trying to. I'm not trying to be that guy. So for us, we lived a little further out on campus, and again, we were thinking about being your own advocate. If you think about it, if you spending 4 years out of school and you living 15 minutes away from the stadium, you're secluded to maybe a quarter of the campus for 4 years. So we made it a big deal to be like out in the campus and actually enjoy the school for what it is. So we were like probably 25 minutes from the school if you walked, but if you drive, probably like a 5-minute ride. So we wanted to be in the actual school. So we'd get up, our alarm would go off, maybe if you wanted to get there at 6, maybe 5:25 a.m. Get up, get your stuff, get to the thing. You got to be dressed and ready by 6. So we got practice from 6 to about 10. You go to class from 10 maybe to about 2-ish, 3-ish, and then we lift. After that, then you have your meetings after lifting, and the meetings can pretty much last from 4 or 5 all the way to like 9, 10 o'clock. And if you were a freshman, you had to go to the Study tables. Immediately after that, and that's another hour, 10, 11, and you probably on your way home, 11, 11:30.
Back up.
Well, you know it again.
Right. And you mean you got to turn around and wake up. Especially guys had to turn around and wake up from 11:30 to 3:30 a.m. to get in the treatment.
Right.
That ain't good.
Right. That ain't good either.
Yeah,
so
like
it's
sleep, right.
So you find out where you can get your pockets of time. Like you find like time management, you figure that out real quick being a student athlete as far as your time management, where your time goes, putting energy into certain things that you don't need to put energy into because you got other things going on. So prioritizing, you learn that you have no choice but to learn that as a student athlete.
That's something I failed at, prioritizing.
Right.
I time managed what I wanted to.
Right.
I get to it.
Right.
So at what point, like right now we're sitting in the athlete recovery lounge.
Right.
At what point of your career did you say, you know what, I want to be a chiropractor?
So I had to make my decisions a lot sooner than I wanted to, as far as like long term and transitioning out of that. You know, every kid when they go into college sports, the goal is always to go pro.
Mm-hmm.
Like you want to go pro, I want to go pro. Specifically to my situation, after our freshman season, I technically redshirted. I still played a few games, a lot of conference games leading up to the season. But you get a certain amount of games, a certain amount of quarters that you can play before they redshirt you. So I redshirted my freshman year, but I still traveled with the team. After that season, our coach, we had a great season. It was all over ESPN, was from worst to first. We won our MAC championship, won our bowl game.
Zach Dicer that year?
Zach Dicer, yep. And after that season, after the MAC championship going into the bowl game, our head coach got offered to coach at Pitt. So he was up and out of there. Him and the staff were leaving. He made the announcement the week going to the bowl game. We were like, man, dang.
Where did he go?
Right, he went to Pitt technically,
gotcha.
up the street. But that's a whole other situation. He ended up actually not coaching there. So there was a whole after the Christmas break. I was all over ESPN too. A situation happened, and he got arrested, domestic stuff, and Pitt literally fired him maybe 2 or 3 days after he signed the papers. So it was kind of like a limbo type of thing. Like, okay, our coach is leaving, but he's not leaving because he just got fired from the place where he's going, but he can't come back. So it's like, you know what I mean? And I was kind of like a bittersweet because it was like the head coach that recruited me is going to where I'm from.
Right.
So it's like, all right, we had to go have a conversation.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So we were actually, and a couple other guys who was on from Pittsburgh on the team, we were having that conversation with them. And it was more so like, okay, go through your spring ball, see if you like the head coach. And then if you don't like the head coach to come in from spring, hit me up after spring ball. We'll see what we can do. We'll see what we got going on. So I always, like, to me, I had that, like, all right, cool. He's leaving, but he's going home.
Yeah.
But that ship sailed once everything went down and Pitt kind of like cut him. Mm-hmm. So it's like, dang, so I don't have that insurance anymore. So the new coaching staff comes in and it's like immediately everything switches up. A lot of the stars on our team, he cuts.
I'm coming off a MAC championship.
We coming off a MAC championship. So a lot of the stars on the team, it was like mandatory. He made it mandatory to be back by a certain, after Christmas, to be back by a certain day. And he cut some guys because they weren't back. These guys from Texas, guys from Cali, flights change, you know what I mean? Things happen. Another guy had a kid, and it didn't matter. Circumstance, just was cutting guys left and right. So it was like from there he set that standard to where it's like, man, you're already breaking up something that was working. Right. So a lot of the guys that came in, the class that came in were freshmen and sophomores, redshirt sophomores and freshmen that won that MAC championship. So the whole team came back, and we went, I think, like 2-11.
Wow.
And then we went like 1-11 or 1-11, 2-10, and then the third year. We went like 0-6 and then they fired him. So it was like terrible coaching staff, just to say the least. Terrible coaching staff that came in. And they actually moved me from running back to corner at the time. He was made move those guys who were playing running back. He moved the linebacker. He was moving guys all over the place. So to me, I had to make that decision on like, okay, should I stay at Miami because they have a great educational program and I'm pushing myself academically and I know what I want what my degree to be, or do I get out of here to go somewhere to go play ball? So I had to make that decision a lot faster than I wanted to. So it was my freshman going to my sophomore year is where I kind of, I was not in a good place as far as like, making that decision. I didn't know where to go. I, talked to my family, and for me, it was like, I'm gonna stick it out because I felt like my degree was more important than playing at the time. So you kind of got to just, to me, I kind of made peace with it. It was like, I got shoved this way to make room for, and everybody, all the coaches that come in, they want their guys. They want to recruit their guys. So I kind of got pushed out the way to make room for guys that they wanted in. And it was like, okay, are you okay with that? Are you able to make peace with that? Or do you want to, or you want to get out of here? A lot of guys left. A lot of guys got out of there. There was a lot of guys that also stayed. So you kind of got to make that decision too. To where, and back then you get penalized if you transfer. If you transfer, right, you got to sit out a year. So it's another decision. Versus now, that's why I love the transfer portal. I love where it's at now. A lot of people don't like it, but I feel like it puts more power in the athlete's hands. It gives the athlete more power to make those decisions. To where it's like, if the transfer portal was around back then, it would have probably helped my decision a little bit better. So as far as like, I don't got to worry about sitting out a year. I can go right into another team and keep it pushing. Versus then it was like, do I want to sell another year? Do I want to, do I want to do this? Do I want to do that? It was kind of like, I like where I'm at right now. I like, the education side. This is what I kind of, want to do long term. So it's kind of, I had to like kind of almost let go of that dream of going pro sooner than I wanted to do. Right. So,
and that's, for that to happen, it's almost a blessing.
Right.
Because like,
right,
a lot of people hold on to that dream
right,
far too long.
Right.
It's like you almost 30 years old. You like, I'm still trying to go.
Right. I know guys still out there, still trying to make it. But hey, nowadays I guess you can get on. There's a lot more leagues, a lot more pro leagues you can play now. But I know I couldn't do it.
No, I couldn't do it.
I couldn't do it. But I held on. I had to let that go sooner than I wanted to. I wanted to be in control of when to let that go. It felt like to me I wasn't in control of that. I made peace with it. I was like, all right, this is what's going to be. This is the way I'm going. Anything beyond this is a bonus, but I'm gonna just focus on this. And everything kind of worked out. In hindsight, everything worked out how it was supposed to work out. So that was the piece for me. Was like, transitioning into, okay, this is what I'm going to do for the rest of my life versus this is a possibility. It was kind of just, that's kind of how I felt about it.
That's real mature of you at that age.
Right.
Like you said, there's people to this day that's 30 years old still coaching and praying, which no knock on them.
Right,
like,
right.
That's very mature to make that decision.
Right.
So, at what point, you talked about your experience about, having to give up on that pro dream a little sooner than most people would.
Right.
And then you figured out that you wanted to get into recovery work.
Right.
At what point did you make that decision and say, this is it?
Right. So our team, our sports medicine team at Miami, man. Looking back on it, they were pretty world class as far as the technology and the progression of taking care of like recovery, body maintenance. So I always would find myself, just kind of poking around the training room, picking the brains of the trainers. So I initially, as your progression through your career as a student, you kind of gotta try to pick your where you want to hone into as far as profession goes. So I was initially thinking about athletic training. So I found myself hanging around athletic trainers, prodding, asking questions, talking about physical therapy. We had DPTs, doctors of physical therapies on the team. find yourself poking and prodding and asking questions. And then we also had a team chiropractor on the team. And that, to me, I thought that was normal. Coming from midgets, our head coach was a chiropractor. And I went through him all through Little League and high school, and I associated football with chiropractic. So to me, it makes sense. Like, it's, we're supposed to have a chiropractor on the team. But that was actually a rare thing. But we had a team chiro. So he would come and adjust us pregame. He also had an office around the same neighborhood where the school was. So he would come in once a week. And I kind of found myself poking and prodding. And I just I kind of just watched. And I liked his setup. I loved his setup, actually. So he would come in once a week, adjust us, get us right. And he was like an outgoing guy. He had the charisma. So he was able to build a little relationship. And I would shadow his office. And I just like how his setup was. He would come. He'd be on the sideline with us and cheering us on, things like that. So I kind of did my research on the front end just to see it. And then I went back and looked it up and looked up the job progressions and the futures, like, what job is in more demand, what's the potential for each career, and these are all things you should be doing for whatever you want to.
Now, who put you on to that? Because you don't hear too many people that we talk to that said they did that legwork of saying the need of the job.
It just goes back to like my parents, as far as instilling like, you need to be able to handle your business. As far as like your schoolwork matters, your education matters, and you got to start looking at that stuff. I don't think anybody specifically told me, but it was like little bits and pieces of people. I mean, and then at Gateway School District, they do a decent job of like putting that in your ear. So it was all like a different combination of like instilling and family instilling it into me, and different things from school, coaching staff. Coach Terry did a good job as far as like, being able to make sure you're able to handle yourself as a man and as a family, and take care of your family and things like that. So it's like, I'm taking this stuff serious, and at the time it was like, I'm starting to let go of that dream of becoming pro. So now it's time to like look up what I'm going to be doing for the rest of my life. So that's kind of was in my head. So it was like, let me do this research. Just like, I was out there on the field hustling to get my 40 time down, to go D1. Now it's time to do my research, transition and like, okay, what am I going to be doing? So I kind of did my own background research on all of the profession. It was like, well, after I looked it up, like I knew I didn't want to be a coach. I knew I didn't want to be a coach because I didn't have the patience to be a coach. But I wanted to, look up the different professions, look up the outcomes, look up the job demands, and look up the potential as far as financial earnings and things like that. And all the check boxes was like chiropractor. So it checked off all the boxes for me. So once I figured that out, I had that in the back of my mind, like, okay, this is something I want to potentially do. That's when I start like, shadowing, and this is all through in college, my junior. By the time I was junior, senior, it was like I already know what I want to do. So let me just try to learn as much as I can about it. So that's what kind of pushed me in that direction.
That's dope. So what did you finish your degree with at Miami?
So I had my major is bachelor's in kinesiology and science. It was kinesiology and health.
Gotcha.
And I had a minor in business management. And I wanted to make sure I had that because they go hand in hand as far as becoming a chiropractor. You own you operate your own. Yeah, you have your own practice. You operate your own business. So yeah, it's a healthcare field, but it's also a business. You got to know how to manage the X's and O's and manage the numbers as well. So it was kinesiology and health was a degree with a minor in business management, and I had to fight for that. You know what I mean? It wasn't something like
it probably didn't. A lot of classes probably didn't overlap.
Right. So if you go in and you listen to, I mean, it's sad to say, but again, the facility, the university is a well-oiled machine to do everything in their best interest for that logo. So you go in and they do like the advisors have your best interest at heart, but they have the schools right. They got a job to do. Right. They have the school's interest higher than your interest, and if those two things don't match up all the time, they're always going to go with what's best for that logo. And you got to know that. And I figured that out going in because it's like, what I want, what's best for me. Why don't, like, you know what I mean? Like, if it, like, what's best for me might not necessarily be what's best for the program.
Right.
And you should automatically, like, and that's just kind of come from what, you know, in high school, it was like, to me, it was always about like, what's best for you as an athlete versus what's best for our entire program. So I found myself advocating a lot, like when it came to year after year, picking the classes and honing in on what I wanted to do. It was like, well, you might be getting a C in this, or the teacher don't really like football players. You know what I mean? So you know what I mean. Versus where you go here, they don't. You know what I mean? It's okay for you to travel on the travel days in this class. They understand that, and they favor the athletes, and you're gonna get a good grade here. It was like, I'm not worried about that. Like, I know how to put in the work, just like I know how to put in the work on the football field. I want to be able to have the strongest degree possible leaving here. So that's what I found like I had to, advocate a little bit more for myself. But overall, that was the degree, kinesiology and health with a minor in business management.
Dope. So you transitioned from athlete, because you went to Duquesne after you went to Miami.
Yep. So I had a grad year, and I was pretty much burnt out. By the time I became a senior, I was so burnt out. In hindsight, like the staff that came in, the guy, his name was Chuck Martin, he's still there today. Really great coach, really great staff. I think they won 2 championships since he's been there. And I went through spring ball with him. And it's unfortunate to say, but by the time he got there, I didn't want to hear about nothing about as far as like coaches, and because I already knew what time it was as far as like it was the same story.
Yeah,
like,
you've been here before.
Right, like, y'all here for yourselves. Y'all want your own guys. Y'all already know what time it is. I don't want to hear nothing y'all got to say. So I pretty much went through the spring ball, just went through the motions, and was like, I'm out of here. But I look in hindsight, like he was a really good coach. He had a lot of good things to offer. And thinking about staying or leaving, it might have been a better idea to stay and go through that season. But looking at it now, I was like, I was ready to get out of there. So I had a grad year, and I went to Duquesne and started my master's at Duquesne. And I played under Coach Rosado, and I don't think he's a head coach there anymore. Jerry Schmidt. I don't know if he's still there. So I played there for the only season, that one season there, and I feel like that was a good experience of being back home. Different program, but they also had a chiropractor on the team, which was a rare.
Like we the only ones that
same setup, and I would pick and prod his head, and I shadowed him as well, and it was a good experience overall. It was a good experience. Good to play, good play back on the Bluff. Good to play in Pittsburgh. Be around a lot of my family and friends, things like that. I forget which question was. Which question?
No, we just talking about your transition to Duquesne. So you did your student athlete experience, and what you're doing now still impacts athletes. Not only athletes, but a lot of athletes should be coming here to see you to improve their performance. Yeah. So talk a little bit about what you're doing now.
Right. I knew I wanted to be around athletes still. I still wanted to, stay around where, like, pretty much, football, sports, that's been my whole life since a little kid. So I always wanted to be around sports and athletics. It's just, how did that look for me? I knew I wanted to be on the medical side. So it was like, okay, getting into the chiropractic, there's a lot of different ways to go to do chiropractic, which I personally didn't know because I always associated with sports. But there's chiropractors that solely treat postnatal pregnant moms. There's chiropractors that only do pediatrics. There's chiropractors that work with geriatric patients. So, once I got to chiropractic school, that's when it opened up my horizon. I always knew I wanted to stick around sports and athletics. So now being on the sports side of athletics, is taking what I was able to learn as an athlete, going through it, taking the injuries, seeing other athletes take injuries and how they're rehabbing, and things that they do to kind of keep their bodies going, versus what we are learning in the books as far as like, what does the book say, what does the research say, what does the new technology say, and coming together and putting those two things together. I honestly, personally believe that if you are treating athletes, you should have some level of athlete experience to be able to really, truly get down to what's going on with that athlete. And I feel like that's the edge that I have, because I've been there, I've seen these injuries, I've seen what you're going through physically and mentally, because it's definitely a mental battle as well when athletes come in here with injuries and certain things hurting. And then there's also a taboo with athletes that a lot of people don't know about and understand. We don't really like to tell what's going on as athletes. So you got to be able to know the culture and be able to break down that barrier, because if we don't know what's going on with you, we can't treat you. I mean, we can guess, but if we don't know what's going on, we can't really treat you how we're supposed to treat you. So being able to make that connection, like, hey man, I know how it is to have an injury, but not want to go to the training room because you don't want to be looked at as that guy who's always hurt or that guy who can't play. But in the long run, if you got all these years left to play, like, we got to get this taken care of. The sooner you can say something, the sooner we can handle it and treat it how it's supposed to. So now you got to get a surgery because you kept your mouth shut for 2-3 years, where you could have handled it 2-3 years ago and it would have been all right. So I feel like I got that edge to where I know a lot of the players and what they're going through, and we can kind of treat how they need to. It also is a sport-specific part to it too. Like somebody who's playing, football versus somebody who's running track versus somebody who's playing baseball. There's a lot of different motions, a lot of different movements that you do on a regular basis. So where now, we can start getting into specific sport-specific stuff. So that's kind of how I treat. Everything I do is to try to expedite your body's own, self-healing and recovery process. I just look at myself as a facilitator. So, how can I facilitate your own path to health and recovery? So it's a two-way street. A lot of doctors and clinicians want to make it seem like I'm the only person that can help you. You have to come to me. Whereas a lot of things, it's like a hand in hand. Like, we're helping each other. Like, I'm helping you guide your own self to better health. So it's like, it's going to be a two-way street. It's like, okay, your body naturally can take care of itself. It can take care of the bumps and bruises. So but if you're breaking down, there's something preventing that. So let's try to facilitate, let's try to figure out what's prohibiting you from recovering, from the body doing its thing. Let's try to figure that out. Let's break that down and allow the body to kind of take care of itself. So that's kind of how I treat. A lot of athletes respond well. A lot of athletes come in, they got something going on, and we can get down to the nitty gritty. We do get some good work in here, and it usually turns out pretty good.
That's dope. So with athletes coming in here, what do you suggest compared to athletes coming in after something has already been bothering them, or just coming in here for treatment to prevent something from happening?
Right. I would always 100%, like, if you're feeling good and you want to prevent injuries, and you want to prevent things from happening, it's always good to come in and get treatment. Always good to come in and get adjusted, get stretched out, take advantage of all these recovery options. Because this stuff, if you're feeling good, all this stuff in here, all it does is help you turn around a lot faster. Like, where an average person, if it'll take you, I'm just yelling numbers out, if it takes you maybe 2 weeks to recover, we try to cut that down. If the NormaTec boots can help you recover in 10 days instead of 14 days, that's a win, especially for an athlete where you got things week in and week out. You got to turn yourself around and get ready for that game or that practice each day. So it's all about how fast you can turn yourself around. So that in general is good for anybody, whether you're feeling good or not. Now, when you're hurting, that's when treatment plans get involved, to where it's like, all right, we need to methodically think this out. This is what you got going on. Let's figure out what's preventing your body from taking care of itself. If it's a tendon that's tight, if it's a tendon that's on the verge of tearing, let's get this recovery in, let's repair. We're going to put you on this treatment plan. Come in this many times a day, this many times a week, until you start feeling better, to where now we can kind of push you away, space you out, because your body That's all it needed is, some facilitation. And now we're going to give you these things. You can do this at home. You keep this up, and now your body can kind of take care of the rest. And then you get you to that point to where you're feeling good, and you're just coming in and just maintaining, and you're recovering however long you need to. So that's kind of how it goes.
So last question. If you could give advice to a young student athlete who wants to play Division I ball, football, basketball, baseball, whatever it is, and wants to perform at a high level academically like you did, what advice would you give them in terms of mindset as they prepare to become a college student athlete and perform at a high level on both aspects?
Okay. I would definitely recommend to transition your mindset from thinking of more like local, having fun, and just enjoying the sport for what it is, versus now it's becoming a business. It's becoming your own entity joining another larger entity. So look at it as like, I am a business joining or partnering with another larger business. And if you have that mindset, then you will act accordingly. You will protect your assets, which is that's you, your body, and your mind. So you want to come in and you want to maintain your health, because that's all you got as far as longevity goes. If you want to have years of playing, longevity and durability, you got to be able to have routine body maintenance. Looking back on my career and other guys' careers that I played with, you gotta be able to. If you have a training regimen or a workout regimen, you gotta include your recovery regimen. You can't just think of recovery as a back end thing. You literally have to recover harder than you actually train, because that's what's gonna keep you going. So think about that. Start thinking about how I'm gonna keep my body together. Besides sleep, sleep is number one. Hydration is number two. But you need to be actively doing something to help your body recover besides sleep, besides hydrating. So that's the physical aspect. The student aspect, as far as putting yourself in uncomfortable situations, that helps you grow as a person. So you want to be able to get out there and experience everything you experience. Don't shut yourself off because all the other guys are doing it this way. That's what we used to get a lot too. And the advisor, like all the other guys, this is how we usually do it. Analyze how people usually do it and decide if that's how you want to do it or not. You don't have to go with what everybody else is doing academically. You don't have to be your own advocate academically. Whatever you have a vision for, how it looks, try to capitalize on that vision. Capitalize on your degree as much as you can. Push that degree as far as you can take it. Stuff that degree with the most stuff that you can, because you're only going to, even if you're going to get maybe a C+, B- in that class, you're going to be better for it because you probably learn a lot more than you would one of the throwaway classes. So really push it as much as you push yourself, because the coaches are going to push you on that field. You got to be your own advocate to push yourself in the classroom as well.
Yeah, for sure. And I can vouch for, I feel good. I told Ty I'm tackling right now the way I feel. I just got adjusted. You know what I mean? So I can vouch for, everything he's speaking about.
We got you right.
I'm gonna get my membership after this.
Right.
It was dope, man. We appreciate the conversation, talking about your whole student athlete experience, and then the recovery piece on top of that, man. I think you put out a lot of good things out there for people to listen to and learn from. So we appreciate you.
I appreciate you guys, man. It's always good to see how guys are doing after we play. We had a lot of games against each other playing McKeesport, man. So I appreciate y'all.
I appreciate you.
All right,
I appreciate it.
No doubt. That was a good conversation.
Yes, sir.
Status Podcast.